It was still winter according to the calendar, but 18-year-old Colin Gillis was on spring break. He planned to return home to Tupper Lake, New York, a tiny logging town with a population of around 6,000 people. He was looking forward to reconnecting with some of his high school friends. His college classes finished up on Friday, March 9th, 2012, and Colin headed for his parents' house after that. Colin, a 2011 graduate of Tupper Lake High School, was the middle child of the family with an older and younger brother. He had just celebrated his 18th birthday less than a week earlier on March 4th. It had been clear from an early age that he was gifted academically, and he had skipped a grade. This made him a year younger than most of his classmates, but it had never held him back socially. He played football, basketball, and always had a lot of friends. He was known for having a great sense of humor, and he liked to go out and party with his friends. Colin was a freshman at the State University of New York at Brockport, about 5 hours away from Tupper Lake. He had been accepted into their pre-med program, concentrating in biology. His ultimate goal was to go to medical school and become a doctor, and no one doubted that he would do so. He had adjusted well to college life and found it easy to make friends. John and Patty Gillis, the owners of a woodworking shop in Tupper Lake, were thrilled to have their son home for a few days, and Colin spent most of the day on Saturday with them. The family had dinner together and then watched a college basketball game on television. After watching the game, Colin got ready to go out with some of his high school friends. It was a cold night, with temperatures dropping into the teens, but Colin wasn't bothered by New York winters. Although he was only wearing jeans and a short-sleeved shirt, he had a jacket in the book bag he was planning to take with him. It was around 8:30 p.m. when he left the house, telling his parents he'd be back later. They watched as he left the house, carrying his red and orange backpack. They had no way of knowing that this would be the last time they would see their son. Colin started the night by going to visit with friends who lived just down the street from him. From there, he got a ride with a group of friends to a residence on Lincoln Avenue. It's unclear if Colin and his friends had any concrete plans for the evening, but at some point they decided to leave the Lincoln drive home and go to a party about 5 miles away. The party, which was at a private residence on Pascagoula Road, was being thrown to celebrate the 21st birthday of one of the homeowner's relatives. Colin and 9 of his friends ended up at the party on Pascagoula Road, and things appeared to be fine for a while. At some point, however, an argument broke out between some of the partygoers, and this soon escalated into a physical altercation. It's unclear why the brawl started, but Colin's friends decided it would be best if they left. If someone ended up calling the cops, no one wanted to get busted for underage drinking. Colin, however, refused to go with his friends. He was having a good time and wanted to stay. They tried to persuade him to leave. They could find another party somewhere, but Colin was adamant about staying. With his friends gone, Colin was left with a group made up of some people he knew, but had never really spent time with, and some people he didn't know at all. Police stated that there had been about 40 people at the party before the fighting broke out, and they believed that all of them were local. There were some rumors that there were people from out of town in attendance, but if there were, they never came forward to speak with police about that night. Colin is believed to have left the party on foot around 1 a.m. Police have stated that the party broke up around 1:30 a.m. It's unclear if the earlier fight had anything to do with ending the party, but it is believed that more than one fight broke out that night, and Colin may have been involved in at least one of them. When Colin left the residence where the party had been held, he walked north up Pascagoula Road until it terminated at New York 3. Pascagoula Road is a winding rural road with no sidewalks and no streetlights, and Colin would have had to walk up a steep incline. The few houses that he passed on this walk would have been mostly obscured from his vision, as they are set 100 or more feet back off the road and behind trees. The moon was almost full, which may have provided some navigational assistance, but it wouldn't have been an easy walk to make. When Colin got to New York 3, he should have turned right to follow that road back towards his home. For some unknown reason, he turned left on New York 3, heading away from Tupper Lake and towards the town of Piercefield. Although New York 3 is more heavily trafficked than Pascagoula Road, there are still no streetlights and no sidewalks, though there are shoulders on each side of the road. The street is lined with trees on both sides, and there is a small guardrail running the length of the road. It is not the kind of road you would expect to see a pedestrian on at 1:40 a.m. on a cold winter night, but that was exactly what Rich Rosentretter saw as he approached the Franklin/St. Lawrence County line on New York 3 that night. Even odder, the man wasn't wearing a coat despite the frigid temperature. Although he was concerned about the man, it was around 1:40 a.m. on a dark road with no streetlights, and he had his elderly mother in the car with him. He didn't feel comfortable stopping, so he kept driving towards Tupper Lake and headed directly to the police station. It was a short drive, less than 4 miles, and he went inside to report what he had seen. A state trooper was dispatched to see if the male in New York 3 needed help, but when he arrived in the area where Rich reported seeing the man, he found no one. He drove up and down the highway for a couple miles in each direction, but never spotted anyone walking along the road. He did not pass any other vehicles either. There was rarely much traffic on that stretch of road. Eventually, he gave up. Austin Toohey and his cousin Jordan Amel also saw Colin around walking that night about 1:30 a.m. Austin was driving Jordan to his home in Piercefield when they saw Colin turning onto New York 3 from Pascagoula Road. Austin stopped and asked Colin if he wanted a ride, but he told them he was waiting for a friend to pick him up. Then, after Austin dropped Jordan off in Piercefield, he saw Colin for a second time as he was heading back home to Tupper Lake. He once again stopped and asked Colin if he wanted a ride, and once again Colin declined. It's unknown if Colin was actually waiting for a friend to pick him up. Cell phone service was pretty spotty in that area, and it doesn't appear he was able to get a hold of anyone to ask for a ride. He didn't pre-arrange one with any of the friends he had originally come with either, nor has anyone come forward to say that they were supposed to pick him up on New York 3. When Colin didn't return home from his night out, his parents were not initially worried. It was not uncommon for Colin's phone battery to go dead, leaving him with no way to get in touch with them. They just assumed he had ended up spending the night at a friend's home, which is what he had done Friday night. When they hadn't heard from him by the next afternoon, they started to get worried. They made multiple attempts to try and reach him on his cell phone, but were unable to get through. They started calling his friends, but no one had seen or heard from him since the previous night. By 5:30, panic was starting to set in, and they called and reported Colin missing. The state police immediately launched a massive search effort. On Monday morning, the New York State Police, the Tupper Lake Police, and the Department of Environmental Conservation worked together to coordinate the search. Joined by hundreds of Colin's family members, friends, and other volunteers, they combed through the woods and streams searching for any sign that might indicate that they were on the right track. They were aided from the above military helicopters from Fort Drum. The search was conducted in an extremely organized and professional way, with searchers walking shoulder to shoulder to make sure they covered every inch of the ground. Volunteers who were smokers were reminded to enjoy a cigarette before the search began, because there would be no stopping for smoke breaks once they started moving. On Monday, March 19th, the week-long search for Colin was downgraded to limited continuous status. Police would continue to do periodic searches of the area, both on ground and from the air, but there would be no more large-scale searches unless new information warranted one. While the search for Colin in Tupper Lake was being scaled back, his classmates at SUNY Brockport were returning from spring break and heading back to class. Although they knew it wasn't probable, Colin's family was hoping he would show up at school that Monday and return to class like nothing had happened. When he didn't, they all felt somewhat deflated. Administrators at the college checked to see if there had been any activity on Colin's student ID card, which had to be swiped to enter any of the buildings on campus. He had last swiped it on March 9th, the day he left for spring break. It was never used again after that. Months went by, but there was still no sign of Colin, except a couple of personal items found on the first day of the search. There was no evidence found to indicate what might have happened. Spring turned into summer, and summer turned into fall. Police asked hunters to keep an eye out for anything unusual they might see while out hunting in the woods. Despite being extra vigilant, they found nothing, and the case grew cold. It's been more than 8 years since Colin vanished. His case is still open, and detectives still follow up on any leads they get, but they are no closer to determining what happened to him. There are many theories, but little evidence to back any of them up or rule them out. Early on, it was suggested that someone could have accidentally hit Colin with their vehicle, then panicked and hit his body. Police are relatively certain that was not the case here. The road is not heavily traveled. There were very few people on at that time of night. Hit-and-run accidents tend to leave evidence behind, and they found nothing suggesting one took place. It can't be ruled out entirely, though. Colin was seen walking close to the road, and one of the drivers that saw him that night almost hit him. But hitting someone at a relatively fast speed would likely have left discernible evidence, whether part of the car, a broken mirror, blood, or skid marks. On a road with no streetlights, attempting to remove all the evidence would have been a daunting task. One of the more obvious possibilities is that Colin stumbled off the road and into the woods, where he fell victim to the frigid cold. It would certainly make sense, but police believe this is not what happened. If it is, they would have found Colin. The searches they conducted were very methodical, literally leaving no stone unturned. In addition to volunteer ground searches and aerial searches, they went through the area with K-9 units specially trained to find dead bodies. They came up completely empty. It's possible that someone caught up with him after the witnesses saw him, but there were no signs of a struggle along the road. There was snow on the ground. Police should have been able to tell if a fight had taken place on the shoulder of New York 3. They found nothing. It's as if Colin simply disappeared into thin air. On Tuesday, November 9, 2020, state police in a backhoe were seen on the Noble Farm property off County Route 24, also known as Edwards Russell Road. At the time, troopers would only confirm that they were following up on a tip on an older case. On Wednesday, state police said they were following up on a lead in the Gillis case, but declined to further comment. Ian Gillis, Colin's brother, made a video and posted it on YouTube titled A Brother's Approach, giving his perspective on the situation. I will put the link to that in the description along with an article so you can read the full thing. What do you guys think happened?